guys, it's Lizzie. So this is my bookshelf, my favorite place. So this is going to be a really simple video, and it's going to be a challenge video for Protestants and Catholics. I want you to go do research after watching this to prove your point, and then debate each other in the comments.
Wasted our lives, but that implies that our lives built around Jesus being alive. They gonna live trying to show the world why Christ is more than everything it ever tried.
So let's get into the video. So something that a lot of Catholics say as a way to prove that Catholicism is the true church, they say that you cannot say Sola Scriptura because you need tradition for the Bible. That's something I hear constantly. They say that the canon was not established until one of the church councils, one of the Catholic councils, and that we would not have the Bible if it were not for the Catholic Church. And on the surface, it sounds like a really powerful argument, right? Because where in the Bible does it say to go by the Bible? And there's verses in the Bible that literally say to go by the traditions. And if you research into the early church, it's just super clear that they didn't have the New Testament fully compiled until a lot later. And that just early on, they were going based upon oral tradition. But this type of argument is deceptive, and I want to call it out. Do we need the Catholic Church for the Bible? No. And the main reason that they say this is because there are a ton of fake gospels, fake epistles floating around, and a lot of atheists attack Christianity and say there's no way to decipher between the real gospels and the fake gospels, that we don't know the authorship of the gospels. So then a lot of Catholics will jump in and say, oh, our church determined which ones are true. But this is way more complicated than it needs to be. So this is the dating of the gospels and the epistles. So the epistles, like what Paul wrote, Romans, 1 Corinthians, Galatians, was written a couple decades after Jesus' death. So then a bit later, we see the gospels being written. And then, whoa, look at this huge gap between the fake gospels and the real gospels. If there was an apocalypse, and then like 500 years from now, people study Christianity who have not talked to any churches, they would be able to decipher which are the true gospels, which are the original of the first generation of Christians, and which ones are way later and are fake gospels. It's not like they're all intermixed around the same time. But the one thing that Catholics sort of get right, that Protestants also need to prove the Gospels and to prove the resurrection, is this guy named Irenaeus. Oh, hey, look at this book. This is a textbook from one of my classes in college. Irenaeus. This guy, if you haven't heard of him, you should probably look up. He wrote this 700-page treatise called Against Heresies, Attacking the Gnostics, who were this heretical Christian group going around. And he basically just declared everything the church believed in the early 2nd century. So this early Christian guy, Irenaeus, he is the third generation of Christians. So the apostles are the first generation. So John, the apostle John, who wrote John, John's intern is named Polycarp, and then Irenaeus is the intern of Polycarp. So the third generation of Christians, he is the first person who officially wrote down the authorship of the Gospels. So he authenticated who wrote the Gospels and clarified which are the original Gospels. So without Irenaeus, we cannot prove the resurrection. We need what he wrote to prove that these Gospels are written by the eyewitnesses or the interns of the eyewitnesses. So do Protestants need Catholicism to prove the Bible? No. Do Protestants need some tradition, some early tradition to prove the Bible? Yes. So now these are my challenges for everyone who watches this. So if you're Catholic, this is my question for you, and I'm serious, debate it in the comments. I want to see how this goes down. You claim your church started with Jesus and that all of your current doctrines, practices, beliefs can be traced back to the Bible and to the first generations of the apostles. So if that is the case, what is the biblical evidence for the priesthood? Where are priests in the Bible? Where are priests in the 1st and 2nd century? Post it below. Go do research. Another question a lot of Protestants have is, where is the Pope in the Bible? Why do so many Orthodox Christians, including the Oriental Orthodox churches who broke off after the Council of Ephesus, why do all these Orthodox churches tell the history of the papacy completely differently? Why do they not see papal primacy? Why do they not see the primacy of the Roman bishop and instead claim the pentarchy, where there's an even ruling of all the bishops? And this is not personally for me, so please don't email me. I just want the comments to be exciting. So my challenge for Protestants: what does Irenaeus believe about Christianity in the early 2nd century? If we need Irenaeus or Irenaeus or Irenaeus, I have no idea how to pronounce this guy's name. I learn people's names from reading books. My pronunciation intuitions are horrible. So we need Irenaeus to prove the authorship of the Gospels. This guy, Irenaeus, is the 3rd generation of Christianity. So he was taught by someone who was close friends with one of the original apostles. So what else is Irenaeus talking about in his book Against Heresies? What doctrines or theology is he talking about that may not be present in your church currently? And what I mean by this, because of course Protestants only go by the Bible, but there are different interpretations of the Bible. So Irenaeus in Against Heresies, he goes Bible verse after Bible verse, defending the way that the original church, the way the 1st generation of Christians, the apostles, interpreted the Bible. So he was like, wow, look at these heretics. They're so wrong. They're interpreting the Bible wrong. This is how the true church interprets the Bible. It was like they had the mainstream, the mainline church that was united in their beliefs, and then they had these heretic groups, and he was stamping out the heresies. For Protestants, when it comes to Irenaeus, go find 3 things Irenaeus says that your current church does not agree with. I can find 3 things. I'm part of Church of Christ, part of the Restoration Stone Campbell movement, and there are definitely more than 3 things that Irenaeus agrees with that my church doesn't. I find that so interesting. So go find at least 3 things that Irenaeus talks about that it seems like your church contradicts or doesn't agree with. And does that make you uncomfortable? How do you make sense of that? Do you find it cherry picking if he says something that you don't believe, but then you need him to prove the Gospels? Does that make sense? Like, a lot of Protestant churches, including Church of Christ, the one I grew up in, talk so much about being like the early church. So have you actually read the early church beyond Acts? Like, the early church continues. There's tons of documents of what the early church believed in the 1st and 2nd centuries. And then my question for Orthodox is, why are you so confident that you're not supposed to be part of the papacy? If your church was part of the Catholic Orthodox Church, and then you split in 1054, when clearly we know that the Pope was the Pope at that time, do you think that the Pope randomly transitioned in its role? I mean, we know there were cultural differences. You guys were kind of growing apart for a long time, but why are you so confident that your church shouldn't be under the Pope? So my question for the Orthodox, go find 3 references about the Roman bishop in the first 3 centuries. What is the reference? Does it make you uncomfortable? Comment below. So I hope everyone takes my challenges and goes and does research and reads about other perspectives, because to me, reading about the early church is so beautiful, because Christianity from the beginning was so pure in everything they believed. They were just a family, a tight-knit group of people. They cared so much about the poor. They were willing to die for their faith. They were so strong. And so reading about the early church, it is so motivating for me, and it inspires me to stay so close to God and to keep living out my faith. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video, and I will read all of your comments. I love you so much. Bye.
He made us so we can bless him. To the world we confess him, resurrect him. So I know I got life. Matter of fact, better man, I know I got Christ. You don't see his ways in my days and my nights. You can hit my brakes, you can stop my life. When I lost my rights, lost my life. Forget the money, cause it's toss that ice.